After the conclusion of the Horus heresy, a great purge ensued. Officially, the civil war was considered ended, but in reality, allies of the War Master and remnants of the traitor legions remained in the galaxy, who needed to be tracked down, exterminated, or banished to the Eye of Terror. However, humanity's woes did not end there. For ever since the Emperor ascended to the Golden Throne, the light of the Great Crusade was replaced by a darkness where death, chaos, and the laughter of dark gods reign. Due to numerous invasions by renegades over time, a union was formed from the Space Marine chapters, tasked with guarding the approaches near the Eye of Terror and supporting the forces of the Chaldean Gate. This alliance was named the Astartes Prizes. Periodically, they dispatched a small contingent of warriors, whose presence in sites of fierce battles proved to be a factor in success, though only fragments of information about this alliance have survived to this day. It was found that the complete list of participants in the formation was lost, or perhaps never compiled at all, and communication difficulties and the high level of secrecy of certain chapters prevented the recreation of the document. Some information was preserved in the ancient tome named Mythos Angelica Mortis, but now we must report that the final pages only contain mentions of chapters that valiantly guarded the approaches to the Eye of Terror and prevented the horrors of the warp from spilling into Imperial space. Of such chapters as the Brothers Penitent, Crimson Scythes, and Knights Unyielding, nothing is known. Their heraldic symbols and colours are not listed in Imperial records, but it is known that they aided the White Consuls in repelling the assault of the Word-bearers on Boros Prime. Beside them stood the Iron Talons, who wear black armour with a silver aquila on the chestplate and are considered descendants of the White Scars. Their emblem represents a stylized metallic silver predator claw, extended in an attempt to seize prey. They are known for their barbaric traditions, as the Battle Brothers have the bad habit of affixing the flayed skins of their enemies to their battle armour. Another chapter, the Night Watch. No data on their founding exists, and their homeworld, the Planet of Silence, is located to the north of the Eye of Terror. The Night Watch wear black power armour, while their helmets and pauldrons are painted cobalt blue. The emblem depicts a white-lit candle with a large red skull in the centre. To repel the assaults of Abaddon the Despoiler during the 13th Black Crusade, the Night Watch deployed as many as 11 companies, indicating their deviation from the Codex Astartes and that their numbers clearly exceed 1,000 warriors. In addition, they participated in the Zeist campaign, heeding the call of Manius Calga, who tasked Cato Sicarius with leading the imperial forces and containing the expansion of the Tau on the eastern fringes of the Imperium. The Night Watch allocated several tactical squads, which played a decisive role in the successful assault on the world of Augura, which was a vital nexus for the Xenos. They participated in both events in the year 999 of the 41st millennium. Remarkably, there is no surviving document that indicates even an approximate number of the chapter. The next chapter is the Marines Exemplar, whose origin also remains a mystery. These warriors in black armour with red hands and pauldrons also came to aid the White Consuls when they were about to confront the Word-bearers and defend the gates of Boros. Their symbol is a black skull crowned with 7 spikes. During the 13th Black Crusade, they operated alongside the Space Wolves, and according to Logan Grimnar's plan, 9 detachments of the chapter were scattered throughout the Segmentum Obscurus. Alas, the plan did not benefit the Marines Exemplar, as in the initial stage of the conflict, Chapter Master Maxim Absalon went missing. His company attempted to evacuate the personnel of an astropathic station, but his Thunderhawk was shot down over the surface of one of the jungle worlds of the Bellis Corona system. The Astartes remaining on the surface did not lose hope, and believed that their commander had survived and was fighting behind enemy lines. To this day, there is no reliable information about his fate, and in the chapter's chronotext, Maxim Absalon is listed as missing in action. Currently, the duties of the chapter master are being performed by Captain Raoul. He prefers to listen to his advisors and has completely distanced himself from Logan Grimnar's military advices. Nothing is known about the heraldry of the chapter called the Viper Legion. It is only known that their homeworld is called Aurelius, and that they were noticed in a skirmish with the Minotaur's chapter. This occurred in the 41st millennium during a campaign known as the Bifrost Uprising. The fact is that Chaos cultists infiltrated the ranks of the local Imperial Guard and eventually raised a large-scale rebellion, which the Viper Legion and loyal troops of planetary defense forces were distributed throughout the planet to suppress. Soon the Minotaur's chapter arrived in response to their distress signals, and it was from their chronicles that it was learned why two loyal chapters clashed with each other. The Minotaur's annals contain a record of a dreadnought named Hecaton Iacos, known as the Guardian of the Daedalus Crater and the Terror of Bifrost. He was on the front lines when Brother Sergeant Augustine of the Viper Legion chapter mistakenly opened fire on the blood-soaked Minotaur's dreadnought. Enraged, Iacos broke through the Imperial fortifications, killed 37 Huscarls and Augustine himself, then tore apart a Lehman Russ tank that tried to stop him. Only a Vox command from Asterion Moloch halted the dreadnought's madness. The next chapter, from the mythos Angelica Mortis, is the Angels Eradicant. They wear bone-white armor, and a gauntlet on their pauldron is painted black, their emblem being a winged lightning bolt. The first mention of them dates back to the 41st millennium. Together with the second company of the Nova Marines, they were on Bellis Quora, and helped establish a defensive line at Port Creel to stand against the Holocaust Blood Crusade. Thus was named the large war band of Cornate warriors who followed the path of the Keeler Comet, whose bloody trajectory from the Eye of Terror embodied the will of Khorne. In the same millennium, they suffered significant losses during a battle on the space hulk Revenant Rex, whose interior was teeming with orcs. In the year 999 of the 41st millennium, the Angels Eradicant escorted the Imperial living saint Lospath to his homeworld, the shrine world of Salandraxis, repelling attacks from the World Eaters led by Akan the Betrayer along the way. They managed to reach the planet at the cost of many cruisers, yet the slaughter continued on the world's surface. Even a combined contingent of the Angels Eradicant chapter, Sisters of Battle, and local regiments of the Astra Militarum proved unable to withstand the World Eaters and the Black Legion commanded by Khan. In that battle, Chapter Master Seleucus Gaul perished. He was surrounded by bloodthirsty berserkers but did not surrender. Beside him, Poderi Tentera met his end as well. He was a chaplain venerable dreadnought and advisor to the Chapter Master. Khan, the Betrayer, took his head as a trophy. Noteworthy representative of the Astartes Prises are the Black Consuls, a chapter of the second founding proud heirs of the Ultramarines. Their first chapter master was Arius Cordos, a veteran of the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy, who served in the 77th chapter of the Ultramarines. He earned fame and honor in his very first campaign, leading the Black Consuls into battle against the hated traitors of the Word-Bearers Legion in the Orbstar system. The chapter master earned the respect of his brethren and earned the title of the Bane of Lorgar, and after his death his power axe received the same name and became a precious relic of the chapter. The Black Consuls have appeared in different parts of the Imperium many times, and as true descendants of the Ultramarines, were always ready to challenge the enemies. Battle Brothers regularly made pilgrimages to the shrine of the Primarch on Macragge until the resurrection of Guilliman, and several former chapter masters are still considered the most valuable advisors to the Lord of Macragge. They have fought alongside the progenitor chapter hundreds of times, as well as with other Space Marine detachments. The Black Consuls warriors wear black armor with a golden aquila on the chestplate and a heraldic symbol on the left pauldron, an eagle's proud white profile turned to the left. The style of the imagery mirrors that of the White Consuls, but the color scheme is entirely different. They strictly adhere to the Codex Astartes and apply the colors of their companies to their pauldrons. White for the first company, yellow for the second, red for the third, green for the fourth, and so on. Sergeants wear red helmets according to ancient tradition. In the year 651 of the 37th millennium, a Deathwatch battle brother without insignia arrived at the watch fortress Erioch. He called himself Hale and was the sole space marine aboard the strike cruiser Unquiet Angel. Hale claimed he had discovered the whereabouts of the fourth company of the Black Consuls, lost 1,000 years ago, and sought the assistance of the Death Watch in aiding the search. The Chamber of Vigilance discussed the situation and assigned a kill team to this task. Hale led them to a massive space hulk on the fringes of the Phaegus system. The Astartes vanquished the vile warp spawn, aiding in the retrieval of the banner of the fourth company of the Black Consuls and a number of other relics. In gratitude for the return of their fallen brethren's remains, the Black Consuls renewed their oaths to the Death Watch and promised to send 3 times as many Astartes for service as the chapter had previously. In the year 477 of the 39th millennium, the demonic servants of Tzeentch created warp rifts within each of Hark's twin suns. Soon, the malevolent faces on the stars drove the system's population mad, and the continuous summoning of demons caused the stars to draw closer, resulting in the formation of a double supernova. As the system had only hours left to exist, a contingent of Black Consuls was dispatched to salvage ancient relics. Captain Varna and his brothers challenged demons and deranged mortals in the burning streets of the cities. They managed to save the artifacts and escape into the void just moments before the star's spectacular demise. In the 40th millennium, a Drukhari sabotage team destroyed the monastery fortress Noctis Obscurum, forcing the chapter to base itself on the fleet. With the destruction of their star fort, the Black Consuls relocated to the planet Cyclopia in the Calixis sector of Segmentum Obscurus, and then exacted vengeance through a 300-year campaign of grim xenoslaughter, which spanned 15 star systems and demolished an entire sub-dimension of the webway. The last recorded action of the Black Consuls before their presumed annihilation was during the siege of Godeth Hive in the year 455 of the 41st millennium, when Chaos Space Marines from the Iron Warriors Legion detonated the Hive's nuclear reactors, vaporizing most of the northern continent. The final report on the chapter's disappearance has not yet been published, as the White Consuls suspected that the Black Consuls might have been destroyed later by the Word-bearers. However, some survived, as their squads are scattered throughout the Imperium on various assignments, one of which is the service of Astartes Preces. Imperial records show that in the year 777 of 41st millennium, a small detachment of Black Consuls operated in the Jericho Reach after the start of the Achilles Crusade. Due to unstable warp transitions, travel became more difficult, taking several solar decades for the news of the chapter's demise to reach the remaining Black Consuls on the eastern fringe of the galaxy. Upon receiving the grim tidings, they convened councils, allowing everyone to have their say. In the end, they agreed that one space marine among them would be sent to uncover the truth about the fate of the chapter, while the remaining Black Consuls would continue fulfilling their oaths and fighting until the return of the envoy. Almost 250 standard years passed, and still not a word reached the remaining Black Consuls about their true fate. They continued to battle the enemies of humanity in the Jericho Reach as part of the Achilles Crusade, despite their numbers dwindling due to attrition. Though they had yet to learn about the true fate of their brothers, many had already come to terms with the fact that they were the last representatives of such a proud chapter. These warriors fought fiercely, determined that their story would end in a glorious battle. However, this did not come to pass. After the fall of Cadia and the emergence of the Great Rift, humanity was engulfed in the horrors of a torn reality. But soon followed a counteroffensive known as the Indomitus Crusade, and Guilliman ensured the reinforcement of the chapter with Primaris Space Marines. The Black Consuls joined the crusade and managed to fight directly against the great enemy. Even in such dire times when the Great Rift unleashed new demonic horrors upon humanity, this resolute chapter continued to stalwartly defend the Segmentum Obscurus. This time, let us speak of the White Consuls. The chapter is unusual in that it is commanded not by one chapter master, but by 2. This peculiarity might hint at an origin from the Silver Skulls or even the Alpha Legion, but these are merely speculations. The chapter emerged around the 31st millennium and belongs to the second founding, with the Ultramarines as their progenitors. The White Consuls paint their armor white, the chest aquila remains gold, and the shoulder pad trim is painted green with the chapter emblem, a left-facing blue profile of an eagle, in the same style as the Black Consuls, worn on the left shoulder. They hold the Codex Astartes in high regard, as do most descendants of Guilliman, but they revere the Emperor as a god. The White Consuls have chosen Sabatine, located in the Segmentum Obscurus, as their home world. Over time, the planet has transformed into a densely built administrative hub of the entire system, a bastion of strength and order. Its location was not particularly remarkable, but the Astartes settled there could be compared to eagles, nesting on the edge of a cliff to look down on the maddening whirlpools of the warp. On the planet's surface, the fortress monastery Vigilia Carceris was constructed. It resembled a tall watchtower, situated at least 200 kilometers away from human settlements. The nearest villages spread across the fertile plains of the Mandau Depression, which to the east transitioned smoothly into highlands and turned into a mountainous region with black rocks, cut through with difficult-to-navigate narrow paths. Then the mountains rose higher, and the eyes of a lost traveller could behold snow-covered peaks with steep slopes blasted by salty winds. Beyond that lay the Keldar Sea. These places resembled not so much mountains as a giant stone labyrinth, alternating cliffs and rocks with spear-like protrusions. Here, neophytes underwent their first trials. On the slippery, vegetation-free slopes, their resilience and endurance were tested. They were confronted by the cold, salty winds and furious hurricanes that came from somewhere beyond the Keldar Sea. When the storm shattered the stone outcrops, it seemed as if gods were pounding their fists in anger. The eastern part of the peninsula served as a natural barrier, being a high rock protrusion battered by roaring waves on three sides. For millennia, this stone massif resisted the elements to become a worthy dwelling for the Adeptus Astartes. Immediately after the Great Cleansing, the foundation for the future fortress was laid here, for the wounded Imperium still possessed secrets of ancient craftsmanship. Water-carved cavities in the rock became the dungeons of Vigilia Carceris, and its walls precisely followed the curves of natural cliffs. On the parapets of the outer circle of walls, nests of Lascanon batteries were established, and stout defensive towers rose within those walls. The caves at the base of the mountain were transformed into forges, armories and dungeons, and gradually within the stone bastion a whole city grew. The fortress monastery became home to tens of thousands of primitive servitors and warriors, only slightly less skilled than the Space Marines. Each White Consul had a retinue of hundreds of attendants who daily maintained his weapons, power armor and quarters in perfect condition. The chapter's forges thundered with unceasing labor. The landing bays buzzed with the constant flow of shuttles, and reactors buried deep in the planet's crust produced energy on a colossal scale. Vigilia Carceris repelled any threat on the fringes of the Eye of Terror, and novices from all the worlds of the Sabatine Protectorate flocked to its walls, soon to embark on journeys through imperial space. As mentioned earlier, the White Consuls have two chapter masters. This is due to the necessity of being constantly present in two regions of the galaxy simultaneously, on their homeworld and near the Eye of Terror, to guard the Cadian Gate as part of their membership in the Astartes Preces. The chapter also extended its protectorate over several sectors, among which the Boros system was notoriously infamous. The history of the White Consuls is filled with a sequence of victories and defeats. But even when on the brink of extinction, they continued the battle for the galaxy's fate. According to official history, their first engagement was the confrontation against a demon incursion in the year 798 of the 37th millennium on a planet called Catharis in the Segmentum Obscurus. Epistolary Kyra Aurelius recalled that 10 years earlier his chapter had defended this world from Eldar pirate attacks. But now the planet had turned into a death world. In that campaign, Kaya was tormented by visions in which a space marine in the armor of the White Consuls shot at him with a bolter. But then he realized that he saw himself. He also received a distress signal from a distant astropathic station, which mentioned the words Fate Weaver. Soon it became clear that Kyra Aurelius had somehow blocked the abilities of the greater demon oracle of Tzeentch and prevented it from seeing the future. A battle soon ensued, and the Space Marine managed to defeat Kairos Fate Weaver himself. How the Astartes managed to intercept the vision of such a powerful being remains unknown. The reason may be an excessive proximity to the Eye of Terror or the incomprehensible whims of the warp. The 41st millennium proved to be quite eventful for the White Consuls. During the liberation of Ophidian subsector, they helped capture more than 30 rogue psychers. However, they managed to escape again during the victory celebrations. During the Gothic War, they helped repel the attack of Abaddon the Despoiler, for he was leading his 12th Black Crusade. And in the year 777th, 41st millennium, they took part in the Achilles Crusade. During the battles to bring the Jericho Reach back under Imperial control, they helped save a Death Watch kill team on the surface of Polyphemnos, where they were fighting against mutant Ogrins. At the cost of the entire White Consul squad, the kill team managed to escape, and as a result, the Consuls demanded assistance in retrieving the combat gear of the Fallen Brothers and tracking down the leader of the mutant Ogrins. Shortly thereafter, a rather tragic event occurred in the Boros system, controlled by Segmentum Obscurus. The system contained 29 planets, 18 of which were inhabited, including Boros Prime, 24 colonized moons, and the region was framed by a Trajan asteroid belt with a diameter of no less than 1,000 kilometers. There were a total of 400 billion inhabitants in the system, and the pillar of imperial power was the giant complex of Star Fort Kronos, built during the Dark Age of technology. It possessed firepower capable of destroying any enemy from the Eye of Terror. But the true value of Boros lay in its ability to receive and send reinforcements within a matter of hours due to stable warp routes known as the Boros Gate. For this reason, the region attracted the attention of the great apostle Excoriators of the Word Bearers. The Boros Gate was to become the staging ground for the end times. From here they planned to attack Terra, and the Word Bearers would be the harbingers of the Imperium's downfall. Dark Apostle Marduk's flagship, the Infidus Diabolus, led the fleet, followed by the armies of the 4 Dark Apostles, with 9,000 Chaos Space Marines on board. They had battle tanks, Chaos Dreadnoughts, demonic engines and assault ships. Over 1 million cultists accompanied the army, jostling on the crowded decks. Having no higher tactical value, they gladly sacrificed themselves for their gods on minefields, on the enemy's guns, and will swirl around the holy warriors, ensuring that not a single shot scratches the armor of a Chaos Space Marine. Using a Necron artifact nexus arrangement, Dark Apostle Marduk isolated the system, making it impossible to receive reinforcements from neighboring subsectors. The Word-Bearers crashed into the system like a wall of fire, shocking the local loyalist contingent. The White Consuls were able to deploy only 5 companies and part of their fleet before the artifact's activation cut off the path for reinforcements. Nearly 200 Consuls were killed in the first solar hours as the numerically superior Imperial fleet was annihilated by the armada of Great Apostle Excoriators. The rest retreated to Boros Prime, where they waged a grueling war of attrition against the enemy forces over the next several solar months. Imperial Guard strike groups recaptured, seized defense lasers, and aimed them at enemy ships, while massive tank columns crushed and annihilated the traitors. The ancient star fortress Kronos awaited in orbit, preventing the enemy from achieving dominance in space. Crucial to the planet's defense was the presence of coadjutor Gaius Aquilius, who became known to many defenders as the White Angel because he inspired men and women of the Imperial Guard to continue fighting against the Word-Bearers and their demonic allies. Cut off from the rest of the Imperium, they did not lose heart and continued the battle, nearing the end of which fewer than 7,000 Word-Bearers remained alive. Losses among the Astra Militarum were in the millions, and the Consuls themselves had fewer than 100 survivors. Worse, Boros Prime, once a shining beacon of order and prosperity, lay in ruins. Its population dwindled, and its cities turned into rubble, teeming with howling demons and feral chaos cultists. A turning point occurred due to the intervention of a third force, the arrival of which no one expected. A sickle-shaped Necron tomb ship arrived at Boros Prime, its master intending to reclaim his artifact. Destroying the star fortress Kronos and landing on the planet, the Xenos began killing both traitors and loyalists. Later, Dark Apostle Marduk detonated the artifact with a vortex grenade, and the Necrons left the system. But the warp routes to Boros were reopened, and Imperial reinforcements gradually arrived in the system. Great Apostle Ikodas was killed by the Grey Knights, and most of his fleet was destroyed by the vengeful guns of the Imperium. The remaining word-bearers, including Dark Apostle Marduk, returned to the demon world of Sycharis. Of all 5 companies of the White Consuls, only 3 Space Marines survived, and among the dead was their chapter master, Titus Valens. In the year 999 of the 41st millennium, the chapter sent several companies to defend the Cadian sector to repel Abaddon's assault. They successfully reclaimed numerous worlds captured by chaos, but after the fall of Cadia and the emergence of the Great Rift, they were cut off from their home world and misfortune descended upon Sabatine. It all began with a sudden surge in activity of secret cults, for whom the disappearance of the Astronomicon became either a powerful psychic shock or a divine omen. For the local inhabitants, the spawn of the warp were merely terrifying tales. But now everyone could see them leaping from spire to spire, and neither the Ecclesiarchy nor the Inquisition could manage the ensuing panic. On Sabatine, there were only 80 White Consuls. The planet became the target of 2 of the Imperium's most formidable foes, the Lords of Silence and the Weeping Veil, warbands from the Death Guard and the Word-Bearers. First, they bombarded the defense satellites in orbit, and their burning fragments rained down onto the surface. A bombardment ensued, and the ground assault began. Drop pods fell like a deadly hail, despite the artillerymen's attempts to shoot them down. They were followed by transports, which unleashed roaring hellbrutes and other screaming mechanical horrors from their holds. Then came the possessed tanks, which ploughed the doomed planet's surface with their spiked tracks. Outside the artillery's range, larger transports landed. They disgorged masses of deranged cultists with swollen, ulcer-covered bodies and grins fixed on their faces. Those belonging to the Word-Bearers were cut with bloody scars, covered in ritual tattoos and the sigils of all 4 gods. Then came the heavy artillery in the form of demonic engines, and finally, the demons themselves. For the Lords of Silence, led by Siege Master Vorx, this was a long-awaited war, a long-awaited battle they craved to release their anger and satiate their hunting instincts. For the Weeping Veil of Morjalchek, the world could become an offering to the dark gods. The defenders of Sabatine fought valiantly, but they stood no chance, and the planet was transformed into a horrifying semblance of Nurgle's garden. There is no reliable information as to whether the sorrowful news reached the remnants of the White Consuls, but it is known that they participated in the Indomitus Crusade, and their ranks were bolstered by Primaris Space Marines. Whether the White Consuls will ever return to Sabatine to commit the planet to cleansing flames, only the Emperor knows. Now let's talk about the descendants of Rogel Dawn from the second founding, known as the Excoriators. Initially they painted one part of their armour yellow and the other blue, with a black axe in yellow flames as their heraldic symbol. For unknown reasons, their colours changed. Now the warriors wear white armour with a silver aquila on their chest, and their symbol is a red fist grasping a yellow lightning bolt. Their emergence is credited to a warrior named Demetrius Catafalque. He was a captain of the Imperial Fists, who gained fame during the Great Crusade and the subsequent Horus Heresy. In preparation for the inevitable attack by the traitor legions, Rogel Dawn ordered Catafalque to command a suborbital platform that delivered construction materials and workers to the building site. The lack of coordination with other defensive structures led to a conflict with the custodians, who mistook the massive platform as a weapon of Horus Lupercal. Neither side retreated, and the custodians began boarding the approaching ship. However, Catafalque gave his warriors strict orders not to open fire on them. Eventually, the intervention of the Sisters of Silence reduced the incident to a misunderstanding, but the Imperial fists and custodians saw that utter chaos reigned in their interaction, which could benefit the followers of the War Master. During the Siege of Terra, it was Catafalque who shed blood with his Astartes before the walls of the Imperial Palace in attempts to halt the terrifying onslaught of the War Master. The traitors paid dearly for every inch of land captured. After the Horus Heresy, Demetrius participated in the Great Scouring, and then the armed forces of the Imperium underwent a radical reorganization that affected the Space Marine legions. With the adoption of the Codex Astartes by the Lord Commander of the Imperium, Guilliman, the legions were to be divided into chapters of 1,000 warriors. Although Rogel Dawn initially opposed the breakup of his legion, he later agreed when it became clear that his refusal could lead to a second civil war. During the second founding, Dawn appointed Catafalque as the first chapter master of the Excoriators in reward for his valor. Later, Catafalque wrote the sacred tome, The Architecture of Agony, a treatise dedicated to devotional suffering, for Dawn himself preferred such rituals as a form of combat communication and soul cleansing. The Excoriators are a rather pragmatic chapter in terms of tactics. Their behavior in battle boils down to a simple formula: exhaust the enemy as much as possible while minimizing their own losses. To achieve such results and be the last to leave the battlefield, they carefully select the time and manner of attack. They eschew the flamboyant last stands of the Imperial Fists or the ruthless offensives of the Black Templars, as well as the pompous shouts with a bolter and chainsword raised in an evocative gesture. For above all, they value survival. This concept is a form of psychological warfare. Even when their power armor is damaged, the chapter's tech marines restore it only to the extent that it simply functions. Cracks, chips, and shell craters are ignored, but beneath them a high Gothic inscription is applied with the date, place, and type of weapon that caused the damage. Because of this, most of the Excoriators look as if they have just emerged from the heart of a brutal battle and survived. This is extremely demoralizing for any enemy, for everyone understands that before them stand Astartes who have seen the worst, and they can no longer be frightened by anything. However, this self-flagellating custom has taken root much deeper in their culture than it seems at first glance, for not only is their armor covered with scars, but so are their bodies. The Excoriators are drawn to very peculiar rituals which they call the rites of castigation and donning Dawn's mantle. The latter involves the ritualistic mutilation of the flesh around the shoulders and neck. Their painful scarification practices eerily reminiscent of the knot-tying rituals of the World Eaters and the personal scarification traditions of Lucius the Eternal. When a breach of protocol or dereliction of duty is discovered, the offender may be stripped of the right to mutilate their flesh or flog themselves. The Excoriators believe that only through pain can unity with the Primarch be achieved, and this privilege is denied to those whose deeds have proven unworthy of his ideal. Chaplains closely monitor the enforcement of this punishment to ensure that none of the guilty attempt to find solace in pain. The self-flagellating tendencies are also reflected in the names of their units. For example, a champion chosen by the chapter master is called the chapter scourge. The senior veteran sergeant is named the chief whip, and a simple sergeant is called the squad whip. Matters are simpler for the higher officer ranks. The senior chaplain is called the santiarch, a captain is called a corpus captain, and a veteran of the first company is named the vanguard, or honored first. Another tradition concerns the resolution of disputes and disagreements within the chapter. If a battle brother has grievances against another, he has the right to demand resolution through a ritual called the trial by the blade. Refusal of a challenge is not permitted, for only chaplains and the reclusiarch can cancel or postpone the timing of the duel. Special ceremonial weapons, stored in the repositories of the chapel reclusium, are usually used in the course of such duels, but in certain conditions, any weapon at hand may be employed. Victory is awarded to the warrior who first draws blood from their opponent. This blood must come from a wound on the face. Thus, duelists may be exhausted from numerous bleeding wounds on their bodies, but the fight will not end until a sufficiently powerful blow is struck to the face of the adversary. Once the observing chaplain identifies the victor, both sides are obliged to agree to the outcome, and the matter is considered settled. The loser must declare their claim abandoned to officially conclude the trial by the blade. Following this, an entry is made in the sacred annals of the chapter, noting the time, place, and outcome of the duel. Even a standard soldier may issue such a challenge to a senior officer, but this right is denied to Excoriators scouts. From the moment they become neophytes, they are scrutinized intently, for their flesh is deemed unworthy of the whip. Their armor bears no craters from projectile impacts, and it still retains the disgraceful gleam of innocence. Until they achieve the full rank of Space Marine, they are not permitted to participate in duels of honor. Despite their rather strange rituals, the Scrappers are considered a highly devout chapter, venerating the Emperor of Mankind and their Primarch Rogel Dawn. They also practice several semi-religious rites. For instance, before battle, a soldier recites a prayer to Dextera Dawnami, which loosely translates from High Gothic as the right hand of dawn, then clenches their right fist and touches their knuckles to their forehead, lips, and chest plate. It should be noted that the Excoriators do not believe in the divinity of the Emperor, unlike most Astartes chapters. They hold that the fear of the ignorant masses turned the Emperor into a god. Thus they despise the ecclesiarchy and the foolish mortals, who wish to believe in the divinity of the Emperor of Mankind. Like all successor chapters, the Excoriators participate in the Feast of Blades, established by Rogel Dawn. He introduced this tradition after the tragic incident known as the Iron Cage. The Primarch agreed to divide the Legion into chapters, but wanted to maintain fraternal bonds, as nothing strengthens them like a healthy spirit of competition. At the Feast of Blades, each chapter nominates 10 of their best champions who fight until only one clear victor remains. Victory for them is considered another way to draw the gaze of the Primarch, wherever he may be. The Excoriators consider themselves pure in spirit, but not in blood, and like the descendants of Sanguinius or Leman Russ, they have a genetic flaw known as the Dawn's Darkness. A sagging jaw, trembling limbs, and emptiness in the eyes are some of its manifestations. Those who have survived it describe this state as a living nightmare, a waking dream in which they relive the bottomless grief of Dawn's darkest hour, the loss of the Emperor during the Siege of Terror. This is both a genetic blessing and curse from the Primarch to his sons, as it allows them to feel what the Imperium without the Emperor would be like, and to experience what Dawn felt when he stood before the mutilated body of the Emperor after his battle with Horus. While in the grip of this darkness, its victims cannot speak, cannot eat food or drink water, and seem detached from everything around them. Victims of Dawn's darkness are left in the care of the chapter's Santiarch, who offers a spiritual healing that will eventually either kill or cure the battle brother. He ordered the afflicted to be locked in a stasis coffin, which was transported from the chapter's reclusium on Ishara, chapter's homeworld. The coffin was forged from dull adamantium, and its surface depicted the Emperor on his throne. The essence of his method was to create an internal spiritual darkness within the stasis sarcophagus. This was the most solitary of confinements, where no self-respecting excoriator had to look upon their own weakness and defect, and where they could summon the strength of will to banish Dawn's darkness and regain their sanity. The Excoriators participated in numerous war campaigns, yet only a few have been formally documented. For instance, from the year 544 to 546 of the 32nd millennium, they were involved in the War of the Beast, having been summoned under the Last Wall Protocol to reunite with their parent chapter and confront the Orc threat. At that time, their chapter master was Issachar, who was well known for his bionic arm, a mass of twisted metal and cables. He represented his chapter during the fateful meeting of the successors of the Imperial Fists in the Fall system, where the last surviving Captain Kurland of the Fists announced the implementation of the Last Wall Protocol. Later, he took part in the assault on the Beast's capital world, fighting side by side with Primarch Vulcan. Shortly afterward, the chapter master title passed to Quasire Ichabod. Once, he arrived on the planet Ignis Prime for an inspection of the Excoriators' mountaintop garrison of Kruger Ridge, but discovered a bloody massacre and too late realized he had walked into an Alpha Legion ambush. The honored First Tiberius was the only surviving member of the elite First Company, and the Excoriators' banner, called the Stigmata, was stolen by the enemy. Ichabod was gravely wounded and sent back to the homeworld of Ishara to be treated by the chapter's chief apothecary, Lord Absalom. Despite his expertise, Lord Absalom could only determine that the Alpha Legionnaires had used an unknown toxin, causing the chapter master's condition to deteriorate rapidly. Zachariah Kirsch, bearing the title Chapter Scourge, became a victim of Dawn's darkness and was placed in a stasis tomb, for he had failed his master and the entire chapter. Following an unsuccessful assassination attempt on the chapter master and the loss of the sacred banner, the battle spirit of the chapter dwindled, and Corpus Captain Shiloh Gideon was ordered to select the best champions and attend the 816th Festival of Blades. The chapter master commanded to win the competition at any cost, to restore the Space Marines' combat morale. After 7 champions were defeated early in the tournament and 2 more later succumbed, it was decided to revive Zachariah Kirsch. The premature awakening of the disgraced chapter Scourge required a risky modification of his catalepsian node by apothecary Ezrachi. He managed to bring Kirsch out of Dawn's darkness and put him in a somewhat functional state. However, Kirsch continued to see phantoms in midnight black power armor and doubted the efficacy of the procedure and the adequacy of his condition. Nonetheless, his superb performance in the tournament allowed the Excoriators to achieve victory for the first time in history, despite the controversial decision to pit him in a 3-way duel against the chosen champions of the Black Templars and Imperial Fists. The victorious Cash was supposed to return to Ishara with the sacred relic Dawn's Blade, but new orders from Chapter Master Ichabod altered Zachariah's fate. He was now appointed as corps captain of the recently devastated 5th Company, which was only half-manned and lacking a commander. Kirsch was given command of the battered remnants of the company, who despised him, and only apothecary Ezrachi, who had pulled him back from the brink of madness, was his ally. Worse, Kirsch constantly questioned his own sanity. Kirsch's first mission as Corpus Captain was a distress call from the obscure cemetery world of Syrtis Minor in the Praga subsector. This planet found itself directly in the path of the Keeler Comet, an ancient blood-red comet whose strange trajectory from the Eye of Terror embodied the will of Khorne, followed by the Holocaust Blood Crusade, whose participants shed blood on hundreds of worlds in the name of their patron. The 5th Company of the Excoriators requested reinforcements from the rest of the chapter, but expected little in the way of swift response. Their long-range astropathic pleas were also picked up by the regiments of the Viper Legion and the Imperial Guard at Helioni Reticuli, the 2nd Company of the Nova Marines in Bellisquora, and the Angels Eradicant chapter at Port Creel. They even sent a message to the Vanaheim Cordon, where Imperial forces were gathered to counter the approaching Holocaust. But no one responded, as everyone understood the complete strategic uselessness of Syrtis Minor and were unwilling to abandon their positions, since Holocaust might turn towards terror. To the great disappointment of the 5th Company, Corps Captain Zachariah Kirsch ordered a final decisive resistance against the invaders and deployed his forces on the planet. Sending apothecary Ezrachi and Corpus Commander Bartimaeus on the damaged strike cruiser Angelica Mortis to a neighboring Forge world to remove them from the path of the Holocaust. They took the precious gene seed of the 5th Company to save it from Chaos forces and ensure the creation of future generations of Excoriators, leaving the 5th Company without orbital support. Kirsch commanded less than half a full company of Astartes, along with a regiment of Imperial Guard from the Syrtis Grave Guard against the Legion of Chaos traitors, demonic bloodletters, and Khorne berserkers. Despite all odds, Kirsch devised a plan worthy of the chapter's ancestors, who defended the Imperial Palace during the Siege of Terror, and led a bold last stand of the Imperium's defenders in the capital necropolis of Syrtis Minor. The scale of the Khorne attacks far exceeded Kirsch's expectations, and the situation for the Imperial forces deteriorated. The doomed battle brothers of the Fifth Company faced their inevitable death at the hands of the forces of chaos, and in despair, they uttered a final prayerful plea to the Emperor of Mankind for aid of any kind. Without a doubt, their prayers were heard. The butchers of the Blood God were soon utterly annihilated by the timely intervention of the mysterious and ethereal Space Marines who called themselves the Legion of the Damned, whose enigmatic ship arrived unexpectedly to obliterate the Keeler Comet and most of the Colossus battle fleet. The price of victory was high, as all the Space Marines of the Fifth Company gave their lives in this battle, and their names will forever be remembered by all members of the chapter. Among them was Company Champion Contego Micah, who had been recently promoted because his predecessor perished defending Corpus Captain Thaddeus's command post on Kruger's Ridge. Micah was young for his position, but cold-blooded and dispassionate in his speech. He was a gifted marksman and took his duties as a champion seriously. Micah was also displeased with the appointment of Kirsch as commander of the Fifth Company instead of the veteran Whipscars, but he studied the orders of his new commander and the brief description of their mission, and voluntarily offered practical suggestions regarding the company's security on Syrtis Minor. Like many of his brothers, he was determined not to repeat past mistakes, even if it meant safeguarding the life of Zachariah Kirsch. Another hero worthy of mention was Chief Whip Uriah Scarce. The mutilated flesh of his face testified to his veteran status. The visible wound sat on his face like an ugly, snarling mask, held in place only by staples, stitches, and decorative rings. Scarce was a legend, an assault squad whip, and he had more combat experience than the rest of his squad members combined. He had evaded the gravest injuries and the severest battles in many of the Fifth Company's victories, and was at the vanguard during the Excoriators' attempts to reclaim the Stigmata from the clutches of the Alpha Legion at Vigelhaven. He was beloved by his men, who regarded him as an indomitable force. Scars was so ruthless on the battlefield that on the midnight plains of Mengadadra, a Black Legion land raider rammed into him with its bulldozer blade, knocked him down and crushed him under its tracks, only for the maimed Scarza to rise to his feet and rush back into the heart of the battle. He was the right hand of Corps Captain Thaddeus and, along with Captain Shadrath, held the battered Fifth Company together after the atrocities in Vigelhaven. The surviving battle brothers were reorganized by Scarza into 3 full squads. He took command of the first squad, which he named Cicatrix. Cicatrix had the honor of driving back the traitor legionnaires and retrieving bodies. By doing so, the Chief Whip and his men saved the gathered gene seed of their fallen brothers, and the entire force was rightfully indebted to them. Every excoriator in the Fifth Company awaited the promotion of Scarza until Magister Ichabod intervened and appointed the disgraced Zachariah Kirsch to the position instead. Only Captain Kirsch's body remained, who, after Battle of Syrtis Minor, became the chapter master of the Excoriators as Quisiah Ichabod died from the effects of toxins. Already in the year 999 of the 41st millennium, under the leadership of Zachariah Kirsch, the Excoriators participated in repelling Abaddon, the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade, and continued to protect humanity from Xenos, mutants, and heretics. Now let's talk about the Subjugators. This loyal Space Marine chapter appeared in the 41st millennium during the 23rd or 24th founding and is considered a successor of the Imperial Fists. They wear green power armor, and the color of the aquila on their breastplate signifies their company. White, First Company; yellow, Second Company; red, Third Company; green, Fourth Company, and so on according to the Codex Astartes. Their heraldic symbol is a black clenched fist, reminiscent of the Imperial Fist's emblem. The chapter is based on the planet Xenax in the Segmentum Solar. They have the honor of defending the eastern borders of the Segmentum from enemy invasions towards Holy Terror. Additionally, they are charged with the duty of guarding the Cadian Gate, hence the chapter typically operates in these 2 aforementioned regions, and they are rarely encountered elsewhere. The Battle Brothers of the Subjugators are as ruthless in their methods of waging war as the Black Templars. They prefer to overwhelm the enemy with numbers and avoid many of the more subtle arts of war, such as infiltration, reconnaissance, and sudden strikes. Their uncompromising methods often lead not only to the annihilation of enemy forces, but also to the complete destruction of their non-combat assets, ensuring that the enemy does not return to threaten the Imperium again. When called upon to reclaim worlds captured by the enemy, the subjugators often employ such extreme methods that nothing remains of the worlds themselves. Therefore, only the most desperate Imperial commanders call upon them for assistance. It is known that in several instances, the subjugators have destroyed occupying forces only to subjugate the previously oppressed human population for their collaboration with the enemy. After such assaults, little remains that could reunite with the Imperium. Hence the chapter's name seems to speak for itself. Imperial chronicles have preserved mentions of several military campaigns in which the subjugators distinguished themselves. The first mention dates back to the year 688 of the 40th millennium. In this year, Inquisitor Hallan Gents of the Ordo Hereticus declared that the population of the entire Abonian subsector was suspected of demonic corruption and assembled a punitive fleet that included the subjugators, red hunters, and warbearers. With the support of the Order of the Black Sepulchre and the Order of the Blue Robe of the Adepta Sororitas, they conducted a full-scale campaign over a decade. In the year 698, an inquisitor decreed that the inhabitants of the subsector had washed away their sins with blood and officially concluded the Second Abonian Genocide. In the 41st millennium, the subjugators were cited in a campaign against horrifying Xenos known as the Selkin at the Technetium Belt. The issue is that the Selkin reproduce like viruses, with fragments of their DNA integrating into the victim's body and gradually transforming it into a member of their species. Space Marines are typically resilient to such xenoviruses and usually manage to recover. But this time, something went awry. 20 Battle Brothers from the Third Company failed to heal and evaded capture after the transformation process into Selkin began. These entities are still somewhere in the galaxy. In the year 742 of the 41st millennium, the chapter allocated a detachment to support the campaign against the Tau Empire in Damocles Gulf Crusade. By the year 777, the subjugators dispatched a company to participate in the Achilles Crusade, a massive war of reconquest fought on 3 fronts in the recently discovered Jericho Reach near the eastern fringe of the galaxy in Segmentum Ultima. Following the Ultramarines' victory over Hive Fleet Behemoth, parts of the subjugators and other Astartes chapters were deployed in Jericho Reach to confront Hive Fleet Dagon. The most significant battles occurred during the defense of the world of Bekrin. An incomplete company of the subjugators held an outer defense observatory station against repeated Xenos assaults. They managed to kill the Tyrannid Broodlord, whose head became the greatest trophy of the chapter, and took an honoured place on the captain's bridge of the strike cruiser Glorious Tyrant. The subjugators were the first to officially witness the existence of one of the mysterious chapters of the Cursed Founding. This happened during the Third Interguild War in the Inca sector, which lasted from the year 850 to 901. According to reports from Captain Ruckman of the subjugators, his warriors were ambushed by void dragons, Eldar pirates. Surrounded and under heavy fire, Ruckman reported that Space Marines in grey-black armour appeared behind enemy lines and drew fire upon themselves. The regrouped Eldar shifted their focus onto them, deeming them a lesser threat, but miscalculated. While under a hail of fire from war grav tanks, the grey-black armoured Space Marines neither faltered nor retreated an inch. Not a single shot harmed the Space Marines, who played the role of the anvil, while the subjugators, acting as the hammer, concentrated their attack on the Xenos rears. After the battle, the subjugators compared data on chapter, responding to the distress signal, and identified that they were aided by the sons of Antaeus. Since then, The colossal figures in grey-black armour have been seen in several battles, with rumours of their phenomenal endurance growing every day. Later, in the year 964, an unknown threat of xenos species was discovered proliferating in the waters of the oceanic world of Terrama Secundus, beginning the process of enslaving the planet's population as it gradually vanished into the ocean depths. Inquisitor Gruberman of the Ordo Xenos led an extermination team composed of warriors from the Subjugators chapter and the Death Watch, and destroyed the underwater sanctuary of the city. It is known that the Valkyries of the 205th Tactical Wing of the Imperial Navy fought during this conflict. One of the transports was named Imperius. Inquisitor Aether was also engaged in battle there and managed to mobilize the entire tactical assault wing of the Imperial Navy with their Valkyries to ensure transport for her warriors. In the year 999 of the 41st millennium, after receiving intelligence that Abaddon the Despoiler had begun his 13th Black Crusade against the Imperium, the conquerors immediately dispatched 3 companies of Space Marines to Cardia and pledged that the remaining resources of the chapter would be mustered as swiftly as possible to aid in repelling the assault. The chapter arrived aboard 2 mighty battle barges just as the Chaos Fleet began its invasion of the Cadian system. The Subjugators immediately engaged in the conflict, during which the 3rd Company distinguished itself. They caused an overload of the plasma reactor of one of the star forts orbiting Cardia at the moment when the forces of Chaos gained control over it. Only a handful of 3rd Company warriors survived the ensuing explosion, but their heroic sacrifice saved the lives of many thousands of Imperium defenders on the surface of Cardia, who otherwise would have faced the might of the Star Fort's guns. However, this loss threw the Subjugators into disarray, as the 1st and 5th Companies had suffered heavy casualties during the defence of Casa Gallan and the subsequent rearguard actions during the desperate Tarn retreat. They were in dire need of resupply and replenishment of their numbers, but at that time they did not have large reserves of gene seed. The loss of 168 battle brothers was a terrible blow to the chapter, especially because the apothecaries were unable to retrieve the gene seed of the fallen. In the final stage of the war, the Imperial forces on Cadia were forced to abandon Casa Partox and retreat to the Caducades Sea, where they hoped to make their last stand at Casa Gallan. With the fall of Casa Partox, the command and control structure soon ceased to exist. The retreat was accompanied by the fiercest fighting, with many thousands of lives lost to allow the main part of the Imperial forces to escape. The Imperials managed to reach the Caducades Sea, leaving thousands of dead behind them. Their bodies were desecrated by the forces of Chaos. The Imperial ground forces fled in transport ships across the sea and were forced to abandon most of their heavy equipment. A company of Space Marines from the Subjugators was so weakened in battle that the chapter was on the brink of extinction. They decided to also make their last stand there, vowing to evacuate only when all else was lost. To this day, nothing is known about the further fate of the Subjugators.